Hey there, everybody. Welcome to this evening's episode of Live Without Training Wheels. I'm your host, Lynna Sutherland, owner and author of Homeschooling Without Training Wheels and homeschool mother of 8 kiddos, ages teen to toddler. And I am thrilled to be joined this evening by my friend Melanie Wilson of Psycho with 6. And we're going to talk more with her and learn a little bit more about her in just a moment. But before we get started, let me do a few housekeeping details to make sure you're comfy here watching this video. If you are watching from Facebook or from YouTube, then you are more than welcome to keep watching from where you are. But I just want to let you know that Melanie and I are watching comments and answering questions here inside Crowdcast. So if you're interested in joining us inside the Crowdcast platform, just look in the video description and you'll find a link so that you can hop right on over here and be a part of the discussion. If you are watching from within Crowdcast, you're going to have the best engagement on a desktop or laptop because, thumb typing. But if you're watching from a mobile device, that's totally fine too. You'll just want to turn it into landscape mode and press the square in the top right corner so that you can view it full screen, and then tap view chat and you'll be set up to go. Also, as we're discussing, we're going to be taking questions. There's a box at the bottom that says ask a question. So if you have a question at any time during our conversation, you're welcome to drop it in there. And it just depends on how many questions we have as to whether we'll have a chance to answer them all. Sometimes we get to everything, sometimes we don't. So if you see a question that looks interesting to you, you'll want to upvote it. And that way, when Melanie and I start going through the questions, we'll just start with the ones that are of the interest to the most people. And so if something looks good to you, upvote it so that we'll know that you're interested. And then right next to the Ask a Question button is a poll that you can answer. And so, Melanie, I asked folks, what would you say is your biggest productivity obstacle? And the choices are lack of organization, lack of energy, lack of focus, lack of motivation, or other. And so far, it looks like lack of energy is a big one, followed by lack of organization and lack of motivation. So I think we'll have lots of good things to talk about this evening. Mm-hmm. All right. So let's go ahead and get started chatting with Melanie. And Melanie, would you just begin by telling us a little bit about yourself and your family, especially your children, and how you got started in the arena of writing and sharing advice with homeschool moms?
Okay, absolutely. So I started off my career as a Christian psychologist, and I thought that being a part-time psychologist and part-time mom would be the best of both worlds. And my son's persistent ear infections made me realize that that wasn't going to be possible. So I made the decision to start staying home, and then I felt called to homeschool. And I was very concerned because really for a very, very long time, certainly all throughout graduate school, I knew that I wanted to be a writer and a speaker. I felt called to do that. And I thought, there is no way I can homeschool and do that too. So, of course, God knows what he's doing. And I started homeschooling. And now I am a writer and a speaker in the homeschool niche. And I absolutely love it. I love homeschooling my kids. I have 6 kids. That's the name, Psycho with 6. And they are currently 13 to 22. My oldest is a college grad who just moved out, and he is fully employed in a job he loves. I have 2 in college and 3 I am still homeschooling. So let's see. The other thing is I've been married for 26 years happily. And how did I get started writing? As I said, I always wanted to do it, and I knew I needed a credential. So I really wanted to finish my PhD. And I'm so glad that I did, even though I really didn't like graduate school at all. Not at all. But my first book I wrote was called So You're Not Wonder Woman. And it was about my struggle with disorganization when I was in graduate school. Just everything was going wrong. And then that disorganization continued into my early parenting years and certainly into my beginning homeschooling years. And I wanted to write about how I felt that God had given me a path out of that. And that was through meeting and finding a woman named Fly Lady online and discovering the power of routines. And so then once I really got into homeschooling, I felt like I wanted to write some books that were applicable to homeschooling moms. So that's how it happened.
And actually, Melanie and I just had the opportunity to see Melanie this past weekend at the Great Homeschool Convention in South Carolina. And I went to one of her talks about anger. And she mentioned that organizational piece as a part of, just all the stress and frustration, but how that organizing piece, it wasn't just like I feel so, accomplished because I have like worksheets and checklists and stuff, but it was even a tool in managing the emotions and the frustration and the overwhelm of homeschooling and mothering. Yeah. I really appreciated that point. So you told us how you got started with writing, and let's talk a little bit about your most recent book. This is what I was most eager to talk about. So I'm going to hold this up so folks can see it. It's called A Year of Living Productively. And you actually did some weekly experiments, right?
I did.
So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So this was back in 2013. I was blogging for Psycho with 6. And even though I had come so far in being more organized and feeling more, on top of things in my homeschooling life, I was frustrated by never really making significant progress on my bigger goals, like writing other books for homeschoolers. And I still noticed that I was struggling with procrastination and, just days that I wasn't getting enough done. And so I thought, with my personality, where I really respond strongly to other people's approval or lack thereof, I thought, what if I started doing a different productivity experiment every week and writing about it on my blog? I would feel accountable to, posting every single week on my results, and I could learn how I work best and which of these approaches that I've read about, because I really was a productivity junkie. I loved productivity books and articles. And I thought, maybe I can really discover what the best approaches are. And so that's how it started. So all through 2013, I blogged, and I ended up then writing. It wasn't quite 52, but it was like 40 some different approaches I tested.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I found interesting was, and I shared with my readers in the email that I sent out about the show, that I always kind of ran screaming from the idea of, productivity or efficiency books, because you and I talked about this at the conference this weekend. I pictured that being kind of like the, squeezing every moment. And it just, in my mind, evoked visions of like just this anxious, frantic, stressful, like moving as fast as you possibly can. And so, I think the first thing that I read that someone recommended was the 12-week year. And I realized that his definition of productivity wasn't that at all. It was more just, not kind of your time going by without you having control over it, because you just didn't stop to think ahead of time about how you would want to use it and what you wanted to accomplish. And so one of the things that I really love about Melanie's book is that it really, instead of saying, you need to do this and you need to do this, it's really a focus on, here are a bunch of different strategies, and not just the kinds of things that I traditionally think of as, kind of, things that maybe the business world would promote as productivity strategies, but even things that would relate to maybe like your health and your energy level and things like that. And I found those really helpful too, because I tend to think productivity is like something you do with a checklist and a worksheet, but it can be related to, things like your sleep and your caffeine and your nutrition and all those things. So I love that all of those were wrapped in here, because it really does make sense that all of those things are going to affect your outlook, right? Like when I don't sleep well, I might have a very simple task to do, but it might feel like overwhelming or discouraging if I'm coming at it with, like half bleary eyes, feeling really wiped out. So, okay. So, how did you decide on this way of approaching it in terms of, if you look at the book, it's almost kind of like, little experiments, and you're sharing about, the results and how you gauged things and pros and cons, and you rated the things, the different things that you tried. And if you liked these, here are some other things or other approaches that are similar? How did you come up with that format?
Well, that was my original format for the blog. And I think I really came up with that concept from spending time on the Mark Forster website. He has a forum, and I tested several of his approaches in the book and for the blog series. And I really appreciate that he is an experimenter, and he really encourages, just through modeling, to have his forum members experiment too. And so people would say, this is what I did. These are the results I'm having. And I thought, what if I did this instead of just kind of haphazard, which is how people on the forum were doing it, but what if I did it in a very systematic way? And, because I'm a psychologist and I've done research, I was thinking of it in that way. If I just, really ask myself, did my productivity improve using this approach or not? It wasn't more scientific than that. And I wish I would have, maybe rated several different key factors, but I didn't. I was a busy mom at that time. So.
Absolutely. Well, and that's why you have to think about your productivity when there's so much going on. So was there anything that surprised you? Any strategies you thought like, oh, this is like, everybody says this works, but it really didn't, or I don't think this is going to be very helpful, but it really was? Do you have any?
Yeah. So I remember one of the things that really surprised me is, I believe it is called the repeat test. Some of these things have non-intuitive names, but I'm pretty sure it's called the repeat test. And the concept behind it is you just take a piece of paper and you write down the hours of the day that you're awake and working, doing something productive along the left-hand side. And every hour you ask yourself if you are happy with how you spent the last hour. If you aren't, then you have to write down what you were doing, and that wasn't productive, or you weren't happy with that activity. And I was so surprised how the fact that I don't like to write things down like that every hour would keep me kind of continuing to do productive things, because I would think, oh man, I don't want to write down that I was surfing Facebook.
Right. Yeah. I think that could totally motivate me.
It really worked. So it was motivational, but I think it was also instructive when you were doing things that you weren't happy about. And I think that was also a key for me, that it wasn't just like not productive, but you weren't happy with how you spent that time. So, I may very well have had a social media conversation with someone that I was actually happy that I had, and then I wouldn't write it down. But if I'm not happy with it, then I need to write that down, because that is kind of communicating to me that I need to make some changes going forward. So that was a really neat little strategy that I never would have discovered if not for doing this process.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about this, and I'm thinking, I tend to consider productivity to mean that I'm accomplishing the things that I expect myself to accomplish in a certain amount of time. And so, if you got involved in, say, like writing a blog post, and you thought, okay, I've got set aside 45 minutes for this, and you ended up taking, an hour and a half, but it was like, this was really good, and I dug in, and I had more to say than I thought, then you wouldn't look back and go like, that was bad. I was wasting my time. It was It was productive. It just was more time than you would have expected it to take.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about how productivity looks when you're a homeschool mom. Sometimes we do these things and it's like, okay, I get if I was a business and I had, certain tasks to accomplish. And obviously you are working partially in a business setting, as are some homeschool moms. But what about in the homeschool arena? Did you track productivity for that? And how was that a little different than a business type of productivity?
Well, at first, I think if I'm comparing being a homeschooling mom to someone working in a business setting, it would be easy for me to say, well, we get interrupted so much more often.
Mm-hmm.
But I think people in business working in a typical corporate environment would probably beg to differ.
Yeah, I bet you're right.
There are so many people interrupting them, and they get so annoyed, and they have so many meetings that they think are just so worthless. And homeschooling moms have meetings too. We have to meet, if we're doing some kind of volunteer work, we have homeschool groups that we're a part of, leadership or planning or church, or we're just waiting for our kids' practices, or we have meetings for kids' activities and learning centers. And, we have really boring meetings too that we think are kind of pointless. But other than that, I would say that what's different is that even more so than home, like mompreneurs, just a typical mompreneur, our personal life and our educational life and any other tasks that we have, they're just so intertwined that it's really nearly impossible to separate them. And so, when I am interrupted, I'm not really being interrupted. That's like saying, well, I'm working in a store and this customer comes in and interrupts me.
Right.
No, that's your business. And our kids and our homeschooling are our business. And sometimes I think that we can get into a place where we feel just annoyed and put upon by these children when they are our primary concern. And really same thing with our husbands, it's all, that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. And am I saying that we can't have other pursuits? Absolutely not. I've had them. I continue to have them. And I think that there is a way to make that work. But we have to have really clear boundaries where a business person's boundaries are usually already constructed for them. A business person is going to get into trouble if they're always doing personal things and talking to family and friends at work. Whereas that's what it's all about for us, right?
Right. So maybe that's one of the struggles about, feeling lack of organization or lack of productivity as a homeschool mom is it's not just, are we doing the things or how many things are we doing, but how do we measure or how do we even separate out, like, what are we supposed to be doing? What's an interruption? What's part of the job?
Right. And even more than that, I think on a big picture level, I think it's so much easier in a business context to know what the goal is and what success looks like. But when you're homeschooling, you don't see that. So many homeschooling moms will tell me, I don't think I'm doing enough. I'm afraid I'm not doing it right. Am I spending enough time? Am I spending too much time? Am I using enough curriculum too much? I don't know. And I think that makes it so hard. Plus, I know, and this is something that comes up all the time, and it's not in my book, but I really feel like it's important to address it. I feel like homeschooling moms, including me, live with this immense tension between the time that we devote to homeschooling, to parenting family, and time that we devote to other things, whether that is, cleaning the house, cooking because it's a hobby, or sewing, or, other like business things that you have going on, or volunteer work that you have going on. And what I hear homeschooling moms tell me all the time is they will say, you know what? I've decided I'm just going to focus on my family. Oh, okay. Well, that is not going to work. The desire is to decrease the tension because we hate living in that tension between,
right,
I have this pull to this, and then I have this pull to this other thing I want to do. And we want to reduce the tension, but that does not work because after a while, and I don't know how long it will take, but after a while, you're going to have that longing again to do these other things, because I believe that God has called us to use more than our mothering and our homeschooling gifts. And I think it's entirely possible. Now, how much time is that going to take? I don't know. But I do know that it's probably not going to work to say, oh, I'm going to put the kids, in school even, and just focus on my business, because the tension is still going to be there. When the kids come home from school, you still have to, be present and be an involved parent. We can't escape the tension. And so we have to use productivity strategies that give us a sense of control and peace about our lives.
Yeah, that is so good. That is so true. Because we do think, okay, what can I do that can eliminate the struggle? But what we really need to do is kind of lean in a little bit and learn how to manage it and how to even just to think about it. In my personal, arrangement of things, I feel like when I'm doing homeschooling, it's not that we're not accomplishing things, but I don't generally finish the homeschool day feeling like I was productive. I finished the homeschool day thinking like we did a lot of, and for me, there's still like the diaper changing and the pottying and the, nose wiping and shoe tie. Like we're still very much in that zone. So there are a lot of things that, I didn't wake up this morning saying like, my goal for today is to change 3 diapers, tie 3 shoes, so all these things that don't feel like they're checking any boxes, but I do feel very, encouraged and satisfied with the relational connection. And then when I have a chance to go do, more blogging or business type things, it's not necessarily as relational. Sometimes it is, but a lot of times it's more behind the scenes. And it's in those kinds of activities that I have more of a feeling of like, okay, good. I had some goals. I reached those goals for today. I feel a sense of accomplishment. I feel a little bit, refreshed and energized to go back into like, now I'm going to go play a board game with the family. And that doesn't check productivity boxes, but it's, building those relationship kind of needs and goals, if you will.
Right. Homeschooling is such a long-term project.
Yeah.
We can get to the end of the year, but I really don't know a homeschooling mom who gets everything done that she wanted to get done. I've never accomplished that ever. And I am in my 20th year of homeschooling. So it just doesn't typically happen. And so that's why I get so much satisfaction out of completing things. They have an end mark, whether that's a scrapbook that I'm making or a room that I'm cleaning out or a book that I'm writing or whatever. I think homeschooling moms need something that they can finish that feels done, because you are not going to see the incredible long-term rewards of this homeschooling journey until it's over, and maybe even until several years after it's over. But they're going to be there. But in the meantime, I think you need something that is just like a checkbox. I got it done.
Yeah, I really appreciate that perspective. I think that's been true in my experience, but you've articulated it really well.
Oh, thanks.
And that the feeling of the tension doesn't mean you're doing something wrong, because no matter how you slice it, there's still going to be that tension.
Yep.
So good. Yes. So good. Okay. So let's say there's a homeschool mom who's listening, and maybe, she's somewhat like me, like, okay, I am not a productivity junkie like Melanie said she was, but I want to know more about this. What would you recommend? How should a mom get started in experimenting a little bit with what would be helpful to her?
Right. Well, obviously, I recommend that you pick up a copy of my book. But
and so do I.
But you don't have to. You don't have to. And the reason that I recommend it is because I can save you so much time. I have listed over 80 different approaches to helping you get more done, and not just get more done, but to have a more peaceful, happy life, to feel like, yes, this is a life that I feel good about living. But if you don't want to do that, what I would recommend that you would do is pick out an approach that you've heard about. It could be something like bullet journaling. Oh, you know what? I'm going to try bullet journaling, which I never tested, by the way. But I want to try bullet journaling. So get yourself an inexpensive journal and test it for a week. And then when you're done, ask yourself, do I think this made me more productive? What worked well about it? And what didn't work well? Is there a way that I could improve upon it? Let's say that you love it. Then look for other approaches that you can add to your life that would help even more. So let's say you love bullet journaling, but you find that you tend to do it in the morning when you're really groggy. You're just not a morning person. So then you could experiment with another productivity approach that I tried, which is moving activities around to different times of day when you have more energy. So you could try doing most of your bullet journaling at lunchtime. You could try it before bedtime. There's not a right or a wrong. There's just an approach that will work for you. But the key to any experimenting is to keep good records. I have explained to people that if you don't keep good records, this is what can happen. You will tell yourself, you know what? I remember when I was using this particular planner, I got so much done. I'm going to buy that planner again. And that's fine. But if you don't have a record where you actually wrote down why you stopped using the planner, you're kind of wasting your time, because it may be, in fact, that you hated doing all the writing in it, that it really only worked for a little while. It was just working because it was new and fresh and exciting. But then after a while, you're like, chuck the planner, right?
Yeah.
So if you have a record of your experiments in being more productive, it will save you so much time, and you will get much faster to a place where you are getting things done and you're just in the zone.
So when you say keep a record, what kinds of things should a mom be, like eyes open for to observe as she's going through?
Yeah. Okay. So, with a year of living productively, I send people a form where they just write down, okay, this is what I tried. This is when I tried it. This is what was working for me. This is what wasn't working for me. So things that I paid attention to when I was recording my own results are resistance. If you find yourself thinking, I do not want to do this, not a good approach for you. If you have to use willpower to keep it going, you're going to burn out. It has to be something that you love using, so I went through so long, years actually, where I just wasn't using a paper planner consistently. And now I look forward to it. I can't wait to use it. And that is what you want with your productivity approach. Even if you feel guilty that you just aren't doing it, be a good observer and just say, you know what, this is not working. It's just not a good fit. If it's just something that just feels clunky and it's just not you, and there's a better way to do it, then try it. It doesn't matter what other people are using and having success with. And that's what I thought years ago. I thought, okay, all these people are using Getting Things Done, GTD, David Allen. If you haven't heard about it, it's everywhere in productivity circles. And so I just must not be doing it right. I must not be trying hard enough. And I have read so many articles about how to make it work for me, and it just doesn't. It just doesn't. And I finally just accepted that. And now I'm not going to go back and try Getting Things Done again, because it's not the approach for me.
So this sounds to me actually a lot like homeschool curriculum.
Right.
Like before you pick one, you might do research and you might hear about how other people use it. But at the end of the day, you kind of have to pick one and try it. And sometimes it's only in the trying of any one of them, where you go like, oh, I just realized I hate discussion questions at the end of a chapter, or I just realized we never, ever have time for the, map section, and I don't really, or whatever it is. But, it's only in like actually putting one to use where you are able to discover what's working and what's not working. So
correct.
I feel like that would free up moms, instead of feeling like, oh, but there's like 4 things that everybody says you have to use, and I have to research them all ahead of time before I pick one. No, maybe just pick one and then go from there.
Right. And, you can choose one. I mean, that is one of the things that I like that I've done in my book is you can make an informed decision instead of just like, oh, I'll just do this because, my neighbor Susie uses this. But, I tell you the best approaches for homeschool moms. I tell you the best approaches for procrastinators and for people who are easily distracted. And, those won't necessarily work for you, but they give you a shortcut. And a short list of things to start with, at least.
Yeah. Love that. Love that. And Melanie even shared some things at the end that she didn't try. So,
Right.
A few other ideas that she's collected, but didn't put in the book, but has collected in case you wanted to look into any of those as well. All right. Well, let me do this. We will get to questions in just a moment. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and drop them in. I'm going to pop up a little green button right there at the bottom of the screen below our faces. And that will take you right to the page where you can take a look at Melanie's book and purchase it if you are interested. And that will stay up for the rest of the show. So if you want to hang out for the continued discussion and hop over there at the end, you're welcome to do that. I don't see any questions at the moment, but we will just chat for a moment more, just in case anybody is in the process of dropping something in. And don't forget, we do have a poll. So if you're on here and, Melanie, I see even more votes for lack of energy.
Okay.
So it looks like that's a big one. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes. I was just going to say, why don't we talk about that? So when I finished my blog series, that's part of the book story that we didn't cover. I finished the book series and my intention was to write an ebook all about my experiments. And the funny thing is that I not only didn't do it, but I couldn't do it. So I clearly still had some work to do. And it took me until about the time that I started working on publishing this book to figure out what worked for me, what helped me to kind of get past the sticking points with publishing this book and getting going on my other publishing projects. And so in the process of actually writing the book, I realized that I didn't just want to talk about the experiments I had done over the course of a year, because there were so many pieces that had already been put in place where my productivity was concerned. And I wanted to talk about exercise. I have been a regular exercise since graduate school. And I think that is the most beneficial when it comes to energy. And I know that people will say, but I'm too tired to exercise. I know that it seems counterintuitive, but exercising is the best thing that you can do for your energy level. And I know that it has a huge impact on my productivity. Certainly stress. Just this morning, I was telling my husband, I'm so stressed out, I have to go work out. And I didn't want to. Honestly, I did not want to work out, but I knew I had to. I just had to do it. So that's number one. Number two is getting enough sleep. When I was doing this series of experiments, and I talk about what was going on in my life when I'm reviewing each of these things, and I was reading over and over and over again how I was tired and I wasn't feeling well. At the time that I was doing those experiments, I was only getting 7 hours of sleep a night. And that was max. That was if I fell asleep right away, which wasn't happening all the time. I needed more sleep. And I didn't want to admit it because I wanted an extra hour in my day. But I was actually less productive because I wasn't getting enough rest. So I am someone, through the process of experimentation, I've learned I need generally 8 hours. Sometimes, because I'm in this lovely perimenopausal stage of life, sometimes I need 9 hours of sleep a night. And I get it. I just take it. I allow my body to get the sleep that it needs. So that would be number two. And then, number three, I mean, I could say, nutrition, watch your nutrition, but I actually don't think that is as important as the next thing that I'm going to say. Pleasurable activities. If you don't have anything in your life to look forward to, if you're getting out of bed going, yeah, I get to do math again today. Yay. I mean, if that's your attitude, it's no wonder that you don't have energy. And if that's all you have to look forward to, it's also no wonder that you feel that way. So I tell homeschooling moms, you have got to give yourself something to look forward to every single day. I do this. I practice what I preach, whether it's I'm going out to have an ice cream. I'm going to have some chocolate and read a book by myself. Today, I went out for lunch and I ate it in my car in my driveway because I didn't want my kids going, why didn't I get it?
What do I get? Can I have some of that?
Nope, you don't. And I took my trash to the trash can before I went in the house. So there you go. I needed it. I have been really having a lot of stress in my life, and it just made me feel better. So plan something. Start doing things that you used to enjoy, and your energy will return.
Yeah, so true, so true. I was talking with a friend the other day, and it's a struggle as homeschool moms to not do that, because we feel like, oh, we should be willing to make sacrifices. We should be willing to, we don't want to be all about me, and all of our own rights and that kind of thing. But I was telling my friend, I really kind of hate those Christmas hymns that talk about how baby Jesus didn't cry, because I feel like baby Jesus got hungry and he got sleepy and he got wet. And when he did, he cried. He just it wasn't a sin. He was just saying like, hey, I'm hungry,
right.
And so we moms feel like, it's selfish to say, hey, I have some needs that are not being met, but that's just, that's how you take care of yourself. We just get
Correct.
I don't know, out of the habit of being okay with doing that.
Right. And what you said right there too, it's kind of it's not you, but it's one of my pet peeves that moms, and it's not just homeschooling moms, but moms can't seem to talk about doing something that is renewing, refreshing, restorative for themselves without someone bringing up the extreme. It's not all about you. It's not just you. It's like, no one is saying that.
Right.
We're just saying, obviously, we don't just leave the kids for a week at a time while we go to Tahiti. That's not what anyone is saying. We're saying we have to do things that are enjoyable, pleasurable, because if we don't, we're going to get depressed. And if you get depressed, your productivity is nowhere, right?
Yep.
So we have got to do just simple, little, fun, wonderful, pleasurable little things for ourselves every day, or it's going to be very hard to be productive.
Yeah. Yep. Amen. So true. I completely agree. All right. We've got a question here. This is from Amanda. She says, I am buying your book. I too am a productivity junkie, but at a really crazy time in my life, all within the span of 3 weeks, my husband lost his day job and got a new one. Only caveat is that his job is now 1 p.m. to 10 p.m. So I feel like our entire homeschool day has been flipped on its head. The kids want time with daddy in the mornings, not doing school. And also this same time period, I discovered I am newly pregnant, feeling very sick and very fatigued all day long.
Oh, bless your heart, girl. Is there any more to the question?
That is it.
That's it. Okay.
So day job to night job switch, and homeschooling, and newly pregnant and not feeling well.
Okay. I'm going to tell you that every time I was pregnant in that first 3 months, I was absolutely exhausted, just exhausted. I didn't get sick, but my fatigue was severe. And I took naps whenever I could. I let educational or even non-educational shows be my babysitter when need be. And I rested and I took naps. And I was sure that my older kids in particular, when I was having the babies, were going to suffer. They have not. I promise you. My oldest son graduated from college, I already mentioned, with a high GPA. My other two sons are in college and getting straight A's. They're doing great. And even better than fantastic grades, they're just really well-adjusted kids. And they never once have said, yeah, you remember when you were napping? And because you kept having those babies.
Yeah.
They've never said anything of the sort. They never felt deprived. And I was so worried about that. So take care of you.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the other thing that I say to homeschooling moms all the time, because it is truth. What your kids want from you more than anything else is your happiness.
Mm-hmm.
They want you to be happy. If you are unhappy, they're going to be unhappy. It's just like our husbands. They want us to be happy too. So take care of you. This is a short season. It doesn't seem like a short season right now, but it is. I promise. Okay, so that's one thing. The next thing that I would do is just experiment with how and when you do school during this season. If this season ends up being little more than doing read alouds and taking an occasional field trip when you're feeling good, your kids will be okay.
Mm-hmm.
They'll be okay. You'll just, and I never want to be an extremist where I just say, oh, don't even worry about doing any school at all. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying if you don't get everything in your plan done and you're just hitting things really lightly, you can come back to it. You'll have the baby and things will get back to a normal routine. It is going to be okay, but just experiment. My kids are teens, so they like doing school later anyway. So, there's no homeschool police who are going to come in and say, you cannot start homeschool at 1:00 when your husband goes to work, because you absolutely can. There's no reason that you can't do that.
Yes. And this is another one of those things that, we think doesn't count as productivity because it's hard to check the boxes and everything. But especially during my last 2 pregnancies, I felt like the fatigue and even depression the whole pregnancy. And my husband, one time I overheard him saying to the children, it is such hard work to grow a baby. I can't believe that women can accomplish anything that they accomplish on top of growing a baby is just amazing. So growing a human being, that is a very productive thing to spend your time on, right?
Yes, I love that. That is so true. So true.
So, well, hugs to you, Amanda. And definitely, I love what Melanie said about just sleeping and resting and taking care of yourself. So true. Okay, so Melanie, I'm thinking more what you said about sleep and how at this phase in life you've realized that you sometimes need more sleep. So this might seem like a silly question, but tell us how you knew that you needed more sleep and how you can tell if you've gotten enough or haven't gotten enough. Yeah.
So I did feel tired a lot, and I just thought that was normal.
Right? Like I'm a mom, you're tired. That's what moms are tired, right?
That was life, right? So I started now, okay, I know this is difficult for people who have kids who wake up early in the morning. That is not my situation. I've always had night owl kids because my husband's a night owl too. And no matter how early I would try to get my little kids to bed, my husband would be like, "Woo, it's party time," and my kids are like wild and crazy. I was just like, oh my gosh, I just want to go to bed. But I mean, the good thing about that is that my kids are not early risers. And so I just started sleeping without an alarm and would just see when I would wake up. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, and I still, for the most part, do that. It just kind of depends on what season I'm in. So like, when I got back from this conference, I am tired. I still feel tired from that. And so no alarm clock for me. No. I just go to sleep and then I let my body wake up when it needs to. The other thing that I highly recommend is making sure that you are eliminating anything that is keeping you from having a restful night's sleep. So I discovered that my room wasn't dark enough. So now I make sure that I bring my blinds all the way down. I don't have my cell phone right next to my bed. That is very distracting to me. Even if there's nothing coming up on it, I'll have a thought. It's like, oh, I wonder about this. And then I would pick up my phone and, I'm checking things out. I'm Googling things. No. That phone has to be away from my nightstand. So that is how I discovered that I need more sleep sometimes. And what I think is also interesting, when I have a 9-hour sleep night, it won't be very long before I will have like a 6-hour or a 7-hour night. It's like my body just has to, adjust.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah. Because I definitely, like you said, like, I just thought like, well, of course I'm tired. I'm a mom. I have a bunch of kids. And people will say that like, oh, I'm struggling with having enough energy. Well, you've got a lot of kids. That's how it is when you've got a lot of kids.
Not necessarily.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I'm not in a phase of life yet where I could just sleep until, I wake up naturally. But I guess it might be interesting to experiment with going to bed a little earlier and then seeing if my body naturally wakes up feeling rested before like I'm jarred awake by the toddler coming in the room for a diaper change.
And I did do that too, Lena. I did. I started going to bed earlier and it felt so luxurious. I'm like, wow, this is so cool. I have all this time to sleep. And, if I don't need it all, then, I'll just wake up. But I have it if I need it.
Oh, yeah. I love that perspective. Right. Because it's if you didn't need all that, then you'll have the time in the morning. And if you did need it, well, then how nice that you could have it to get what you needed. Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. So Jenny says, what would you say to a seasoned homeschool mom who feels pretty good about homeschooling and that runs pretty smoothly, but she feels called to do something else, like write a book or start a ministry? What first steps should I try to adapt what's going well to fit that new project?
Okay. So my best advice, Jenny, is to make your new calling, your new project, a priority first thing. Okay. So here is why. Because if I say, I am going to work on my book at the end of the day, okay, I'm going to be too tired. Okay. Number one. Or number two, all these things are going to happen to keep me from doing it. And the other part of our human nature is why I suggest this, because if you already have the homeschooling thing down, you will absolutely get your homeschooling in then, because that is a habit. That's your routine. But you don't have your writing your book or working on your new ministry as part of your routine. So that is why you want to put it first. Even if you start with 15 minutes, 30 minutes, just make that a routine and tell your family that this is very important to you. So if you do have kids who wake up early, tell them, okay, when you wake up, this is your Bible time. This is your time with God. This is your time to get your chores started, to have breakfast, whatever, because mom is working on this book. That is God's calling on my life. And if I don't make that time, every day or Monday through Friday or whatever it is, then it just won't happen. It will just be something I keep talking about. That is huge. That is my number one tip for you.
Yeah. I love what you said about actually saying to your children that this is a calling on your life, because, I'm thinking as you're saying that, like, not only is it, okay, here, I have these gifts and I want to use them for God and for his kingdom, but what are we teaching our daughters and our sons who are watching? What does a mom do in the home? What does it look like to be a mom? Maybe some of our girls will grow up to be homeschool moms or to, work from home or something. And our sons may marry women like that. And we're modeling like, yes, moms do other things besides just mom and homeschool.
Right. And not that we have to, if you are just like completely, fulfilled in your calling as a mother and a homeschooling mom, I would never want to suggest you need to be doing something else, because you don't have to do anything else. But if you have that calling that you just can't ignore, like it would just kill you not to do something with it, then I believe that you have to just go with it. Go with that leading and continue to experiment, to find ways to carve out time that works with your family, that works with your homeschooling, that keeps your relationship with your spouse strong and doesn't leave you feeling drained, but actually energized. That's what we all want.
Well said. Very true. Well, Melanie, thank you so much for taking some time to be with us this evening. And again, if you're just hopping in here, there's a button right here underneath our faces that says A Year of Living Productively. And if you click that, it'll take you over to Melanie's site, Psycho with 6. And there's a page there specifically for learning more about the book. And so if you're watching this on the replay, it's still available. You can hop right over there. Also, if you're watching on the replay, you can skip right to any of the questions that you would like to see answered by clicking on the button next to them. So anyway, thank you so much, Melanie, for coming on here this evening to be with us. And we will see you next week for the next episode of Live Without Training Wheels. And actually during the month of April, April is Math Month. So we're going to be talking to lots of folks who have great things to share about teaching math in your homeschool. So thank you, Melanie. Thanks y'all for joining us.